This is Madia-as Digdigan Buenaflor, extending an invitation to each and every one of you everywhere. As my way of commemorating the 75th anniversary of the end of World War II, I will read and serialize my novel, The Blood of Three, starting on Tuesday, August 27, and continuing episodes on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Follow the drama on my YouTube channel. May we forever exhale and inhale love and peace. Mr. Miura's hands pressed his eyes in an effort to obliterate the picture of those three people. It had been 2 years, but the whole incident still seemed too recent to forget. It had been a frequent visitor in the abyss of his sleep. "I'm ready, Daddy," Joybell's voice broke through the darkness that had haunted Mr. Miura and brought him back to the present. Turning from the window, where he stood for some time, he walked toward Joybell's room and smiled again, his grin wider than the first. "It's too good to be true. If this is a dream, let me not awake from it," he thought, looking at Joybell, immaculate in her white bouffant dress, dotted with prints of pink roses. Today was Joybell's birthday, her 16th. "Coming, Daddy," Joybell chirped when she saw Mr. Miura peep at the door. "Hold on a minute, Joybell baby." Lota held her back, gathering her long platinum hair behind her nape with a blue ribbon that matched the azure of her eyes. Mr. Miura was amused watching her wife trying to hold still a very exciting girl. How could one hold back a bubbling spring? Joybell glided out of the room, her mother behind her. Mr. Miura approvingly nodded at his wife. "Happy birthday, Joybell, sweetheart." He greeted her with a distinct Japanese inflection, something he hasn't dropped from his accent. He planted a kiss on her cheek and gathered her in his arms. "Oh, I'm so thrilled, Daddy. It feels great to be in this pretty dress," she exclaimed. Mr. Miura nodded and smiled, following Joybell and Lota down the stairs. "She's right, poor girl," he thought. For almost 3 years now, she was content wearing faded and patched clothes. He felt a lump in his throat. If only times were different, but this was war, and nothing was the same. The Philippines had been in the throes of the 3rd year of the Second World War. Every city and hamlet in this pearl of the Orient Sea still smelled of fresh blood. Countless lives, mostly of youths who were just beginning to seek their ideals and pursue their dreams, had been prematurely slapped from their buds. Civilians had undergone unbearable and harrowing experiences that made them shudder at the mere thought of reliving those years again. Children were left fearless, families rendered homeless, people robbed of their peace. Amazingly, one family survived all this. Undoubtedly, the bond of love proved stronger than the forces of war. It had endured its tribulations. Queerly enough, this family was composed of a Japanese father, a Filipina mother, and an American daughter. Such was the Miura family. As the three walked through the town, Mr. Miura gazed far out to the sea. Yes, a great change has taken place in the town from when he first visited it before the war. This once peaceful haven of contented fishermen was now an entrenched fortress of huge and powerful cannons. Mortars lined its shores. Uniformed Japanese soldiers marched along its streets. Gone were the once quiet moments when only the majestic waves dashed against the shore, bringing to the land the tranquility of its sea. Now the roars of cannons rocked the sea, the sound amplified as it echoed back from the mountains, sending tremors to the earth that once shielded only abundance of greens. Fishermen no longer ventured to the sea. Mr. Miura stopped and stared at the distant towering bastion, its shadow spread like a vulture, watching and hovering over its prey. What a way to keep peace, he murmured, sadly shaking his head. The Japanese imperial forces had made a stronghold of this town, hemmed in by the sea on one side and walled by the mountain ranges on the other. A strongly barricaded fortress stood bare-breasted against the sky. Acres of thickly walled-in garrisons surrounded this seemingly impregnable fortress, which 3 centuries ago served as a fort against the fierce marauders from the islands south of the Philippines, later reconstructed into a church and now once again converted back as a fortress. Barracks now sprouted like mushrooms all over the grounds, sheltering its manpower. At its outskirts was the town where Japanese and Filipino civilians stayed. For their protection, they were advised. The Miuras occupied a very inconspicuous nipa hut, the thatched house he built himself. To reach the chapel, they had to go through the public plaza and the numerous checkpoints at every street intersection. He sighed as they passed by the town government building, a concrete edifice which was commanded by the Japanese and turned into their garrison. The same thing was done to the school buildings a couple blocks away. The only place still unoccupied by them was the concrete market shed in the center of a clearing, spattered with a few more small thatched sheds used by the vendors on Sundays, the town market day. They reached the chapel, which was partly damaged by the elements. Its doors had been closed for years, and no masses were conducted under its roof. The parish priest died shortly after the outbreak of the war, but the Miuras had been devout visitors to this long deserted chapel. All 3 meekly bowed their heads before what was once a beautiful altar. "Our gratitude is endless, O Lord, for saving our daughter," murmured Lota, "and for keeping us safe together. I asked for thy blessing, dear God, not for me, but for my daddy and mommy," whispered Joybell, pressing the cross of her rosary to her lips. "Make me thy instrument to keep peace where there is war, to sow love where there is hatred. Whatever I may lack in body, please let me have in spirit." Mr. Miura's lips quivered, his eyes closed in prayer. After closing the chapel door behind them, Mr. Miura put his arms around Lota and Joybell as he deeply inhaled the cool morning air. There radiated joy in their faces and serenity in their hearts, greeting civilians along the way. They were loved and respected by the townspeople. They belonged. It was so different from the time they first arrived 2 years ago, passing the same streets haggard and worn out from their long, arduous sea voyage. They were regarded with contempt and suspicion because of the makeup of their family. Joybell was almost placed in the concentration camp, but spared, not only because Mr. Miura pleaded, but also because the commander found his trade useful to them. Quid pro quo. He heard that from the wealthiest man in town with the politicians before the war. It worked in peace. It worked in war as well. The very first time people set eyes on them as a family before the war, they were eyed with mockery, even sneered upon with malicious gossip. The gossip that helped the town folks survive the boredom of the day and made it a little more bearable at their expense. Yet they responded with friendship. "We must try to avoid fighting hostility with hostility. It seldom works," was Mr. Miura's mantra. "How could you be so patient?" Lota wondered, and he always had a ready answer. "Is there any other way?" "Yes, but they seem to always end up in tragedy. Like what happened many years ago," Joybell cut in. "The one that involved the town grocer and the town cop," Lota recalled. "Yes, Mommy. First they argued, then there was cursing, then groceries flying, then a fist fight. The crowd became bigger. I squeezed myself between excited feet so I could see better. Then a gun went off. The grocer never got up, and we attended his funeral. My friend Leta never smiled again. She was the grocer's daughter. An accident, I gathered, and for what?" Lota sighed. "For an argument that started in a disagreement about a shouting match between the husband and wife that they overheard the previous night. They couldn't come to terms as to which of the spouses turned unfaithful ahead of the other." How something as trivial as minding other people's business could escalate into a fight in defense of one's ego and pride, or the so-called amor propio, Mr. Miura pondered. If only we can learn to hold back and think before we hurt one another. We won't let that happen to us, Daddy, would we? No, we shouldn't. There are better alternatives. And so the Miuras tried patience and understanding. As they passed by the checkpoint, they greeted the sentry in unison. Ohio. The guard smiled and bowed. Their appearance became a familiar and an accepted sight to both the Japanese and the Filipinos. They had long passed the checkpoint when Joybell sensed the guard's eyes still on her. She turned and waved. The guard grinned widely, which made his eyes disappear, but he jerked back at attention when a group of soldiers passed him. Joybell skipped to catch up with his parents. Mr. Miura whistled an old familiar Japanese melody, with Lota and Joybell singing the words in perfect Japanese. Reaching home, Mr. Miura threw open the 3 windows, letting the sunlight flood their small living room. The bamboo floor shone as they caught the light. The whole day yesterday, Mr. Miura scrubbed the floor. They looked forward to this day. The vase on the small round table was fragrant with ilang-ilang flowers and rich with the color for bougainvillea. The bamboo rocking chair, the favorite of Mr. Miura, underwent a washing too. The bamboo bins had been wiped, and so with the 3 chairs. Joybell picked a flower from the vase and tucked it in her hair. She turned around before the small mirror that hung in a corner of the living room. Mr. Miura smiled and went to the kitchen, where Lota was preparing their food. Joybell hopped after her father. The rice cake was being baked in a round, shallow tin pan between the flaming charcoals beneath it and the glowing ember on the flat tin above it. Lota poured the coconut juice into a pitcher, and Mr. Miura made himself useful by scraping the young coconut meat with a thin strip of tin. They looked forward to a delicious coconut punch. Joybell sat on the arm of her father's chair as he sang a Japanese song joined in by Lota. Well, Lota, my darling, you sing just like a Japanese, he winked at her. And you, Mahal, more Filipino than I am, bantered Lota, and smiled at him with an emphasized glance that deepened her dimples. She loved to call him Mahal, the Filipino word for love. Joybell was sure she saw a hint of flirtation between her parents. She loved it. How they maintained their love and passion awed her. Would she experience the same someday? She wondered. But that day would not come yet, not for a long, long time. When the cake was done, Lota carefully shook it down on a platter, which she earlier garnished with some pagita petals. For icing, she dripped steaming molasses on the cake and arranged 16 small candles. The day before, she liquefied slabs of pork fat, poured it into the small rolls of banana stalks with wicks in its center, and allowed the liquefied fat to set overnight, and voila, 16 birthday candles. They carried the cake to the round table. Lota had also prepared biscuits from cassava flour, lots of this, and boiled cassava roots and sweet yams, corn porridge and candied banana peels, and of course their favorite coconut candy. It was a feast, but they didn't have this often. In fact, they only had 1 or the most 2 times of food for their daily meals, but today was special, and not only for them. Mr. Miura was proud at his wife's ingenuity, and Joybell could only gape in amazement as he nipped the cake and ran a finger along the dripping molasses and licked it, just like a child would. After all, she was still just a child. It shouldn't be the number of years that should count, but how young one felt. Mr. Miura always reminded themselves whenever they felt down and blue and wondered where the years have gone. Everything looks delicious. May I bring some of this to my friends, to Michiko, Rosa, Mario, Omeki, and Nora? And she rattled off breathlessly. Of course. Why do you think your mommy prepared all this? Oh, thank you, mommy. She showered her with kisses. Now that that's settled, we have to move on to this special moment. Mr. Miura lighted the candles, one at a time, very slowly, as if in a ritual. Together they sang the happy birthday song. Joybell put out all 16 candles in one blow. Jubilant applause echoed, drowning her silent wishes that we may live together happily and peacefully for as long as God wills it. Her mother often told that we can wish and dream to our heart's desires, but to ultimately accept with gratitude God's will, for not everything we want is what we need. Joybell learned well. Haven't we missed something, Lota dear? We almost didn't we? Lota hurried to the wooden trunk in the bedroom and came back with 2 wrapped packages. Mr. Miura handed his gift to Joybell, wrapped in dried pulp banana stalk, thin as paper but more textured and ribboned with twisted abaca fiber. After opening the gifts, he refolded its wrapper, appreciating the work that went into its creation, and planned to treasure it. She was amazed at the beauty of the carved wooden jewelry box with an embossed dove, a leaf in its beak, delicately etched on its cover. I wish everyone loves peace as much as you do, Daddy, she hugged him. We can start here, fill our hearts with peace, and reach out with it. It was Lota's turn to hand her present. The small box was wrapped in white Japanese paper, topped with a single fragrant gardenia. What Joybell uncovered stirred her up. It was a 2-inch heart locket carved from lacquered clam shell with a butterfly metal clasp and a braided abaca cord for chain. It's so beautiful, Mommy, Joybell gasped. It was a gift from your daddy, and now it's our gift to you. Luther glanced at Mr. Miura. He had tears in his eyes. They both had, both thinking of the same thing, their precious Joybell. And grateful to one special man, how proud and happy he would have been. But he was dead 13 years ago. He was Joybell's father. Joybell opened the locket, and it was a faded photo of their family, their family of 4, Joybell, Lota, Henry Howard, and Mr. Miura. That's all for today, to be continued on Tuesdays and Thursdays. May we all forever exhale and inhale love and peace. Thanks for being with me today. I hope you will inspire me with a like, share, and subscribe.